Welcome to For Collectors.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to our channel, For Collectors, a channel that's for collectors like you. I'm Theo, and today is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be predicting the future of the hobby. We have 4 different topics, and I have a great panel of guys, so I'm just going to bring them on. We're gonna roundtable all 4 of these topics, and I'd love to hear from the chat what you guys think you agree with, what you disagree with, and what some of your ideas are. And then I'll bring up some of the chat and tell you who's out there right now. So first off, we got Chris from Missouri in the house. What's up, Chris?
Well, how's it going, Theo?
Not too bad.
Looking forward to this. I get to play Karnak or Nostradamus or some of those great fortune tellers.
Yeah, you got your fortune teller. I was going to ask you. We got the NFL playoffs coming up. Are you betting on the Chiefs to win, or what are you thinking here?
I'm just trying to figure out who's going to finish second.
I like the confidence.
Yeah, pretty confident.
It's not easy to get a three-peat, so we'll see.
They're the only one that's going to be able to do it this year.
We'll see. We got to go Ravens from Andrew. I'll give Andrew a shout out right now. I hate the Ravens, but Andrew's been in the chat since like 7 p.m. I think. Thanks for the support, Andrew. I appreciate it, man. All right, next up, we got Jason. Let me fix this layout here, guys. Sorry. Jason from Cards and Comics. Jason, thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on. First time on this channel or this show, and very excited to meet some new collectors and talk about cards.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on. You always have some great opinions on your own channel, so I always like to get some different opinions on here. So thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, no problem. Thank you for having me.
All right, we got the Rookie of the Year, Tony, Southern Collector. What's up, Tony?
Hey, Theo. Good to see you, buddy.
Nice to see you too. I think you were on Junk Wax Heroes Live tonight, so
yeah, I was there with Mike. Yeah, making the rounds here, like that press thing they do when they have a movie and you got to go talk to everybody. But no, it's been fun. Awesome. Making lots of new friends.
That's awesome. Well, I reached out to you, and I've always seen you go on channels and show your collection. I've never seen you go on and give your opinions on topics, so I thought this would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I never do that. I can't even do that at home. My wife doesn't allow it either, so this is going to be the first time I've ever got to do this, so I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. All right, let me give some of the chat a shout out real quick before we start, and then I'll only post comments that pertain to the topic. Mookie Chilson in the house. We got Chris's best friend, Billy Ballgames, in the house. What's up, Billy? We got the 5th collector himself, Dan's in the house. We got Darren. We got the Penny Sleever. We got Orlando. What's up, Greg? Welcome back from Hawaii. Lonely Basement Card Collector in the house. We got Tom in the house. Larry, Ruben. We got an all-star cast out here. Redneck Collector. I think I also saw, Wax Packs Wisdom. What's up, everybody? And Lou Rock TV. Wow. We got it. We already have 47 people. Welcome, guys. This should be fun. Oh, man, Jeannie's in the house, and Dylan. What's up, guys? All right, let's get this party started, guys. So the first topic, and like I said, if the chat wants to jump in, that'd be great. If you guys had a crystal ball and if you guys could predict the future of card shows, what do you guys think will happen in the future with card shows? Jason, you look ready to go. You want to jump in this first?
Yeah, I mean, I've set up as a dealer and obviously attended as a collector. I probably did at highest peak 20 to 30 shows a year in Indiana. So first thing I think with card shows is the comps and the percentage given to the collector for their cards is going to go down. Right now with, you have a lot of the repackers offering 80, 85%, sometimes 100% of comps for your cards. And that kind of gave the hobby a jolt of cash flow. I just feel like that's starting to taper off, and you're going to see collectors now, even with liquid cards, getting closer to that 50, 60, 70% comp they used to get. That's obviously going to have an effect on the amount of cash flow at a card show. When we're getting 85 to 90% comp on your collection, you can obviously spread that cash. You had more cash to spread at that show. So I do think we're going to see those percentages given to collectors for the cards go down in 2025. I don't think the economy and just those repackers are as active as they were before.
I could definitely see that. Chris, what's your opinion?
Well, that's pretty interesting right there, as far as dealers maybe not giving out a big a percentage. I tend to think that you could benefit if you're a dealer by keeping your percentages closer, because people will start coming to you more and more, and maybe you can get a bigger share of that show's market. But let's see. I think there's going to be more bigger venues. Bigger venues in my area seem to be kind of squeezing the little guy just a little bit. But it's easier, a person, if they end up going to a bigger show that's going on the same time as that little show, he's kind of going to take away a big draw at that small show. So I think we're going to see a little bit more bigger venues. We're going to see less and less of the bigger signees at card shows, because a few of the shows around this area, there's some signees, but now they're getting signed by companies. So they got to get permission to sign a card or permission to go. So I think you're going to see the signees at some of these shows become less significant, maybe, and maybe just really local to that area. And we're going to see more and more. Now this is in the future, and we have a little bit of this going on now, but I think you're going to see an occupation called a professional card buyer. And let's say there's going to be a 19 or 20-year-old kid named Theo that's just got a lot of money, and he starts his own company, and there's a couple really rich guys like Tony and Jason that's going to set their fat rear end on a couch and get on the phone and tell Theo to walk around with this Sky Pro, and I want you to go to these dealers, and they're going to rent you, and you're going to be buying cards for them. And we see a little bit of it kind of in a fun way, where people are, going around videotaping stuff and say, hey, if you see anything, let me know. We're actually going to have people that's going to be going out there for the purchase of being individual buyers for some stuff. And
it's interesting you say that, Chris. I'm sorry. Marshall Fogel had a buyer almost the entire time he was putting his collection together. He actually didn't buy a lot of those cards himself. So he paid someone to go to card shows and to kind of broker a lot of the deals for him. So he was kind of an innovator in that way.
Okay. Well, innovator number 2 is Chris right here, because I'm in Showcase Showdown with Mike Moynihan on his channel that's kind of struggling right now. And I'm doing that best I can to get him more subscribers. But I have professional buyers trying to buy some stuff for me right now. So that's kind of where I got that idea. But what I would like to see more and more of, and it's going to be hard to do, is more and more specialized shows, whether it's all new stuff or Pokemon stuff or vintage stuff, because, it's going to be hard for dealers to do that. But if you go to Strongsville to the show, which I'm plugging that again, but if you go to Strongsville, you're probably not going to find your Pokemon card. You're not going to find some kind of, a 101 Nolan Ryan 5-star autograph kind of thing. If you're disappointed when you leave there, it's because if you're going there to buy vintage cards and look at vintage cards. And I think I would love to see more specialized shows. That way, when I go to a show and I see one vintage table, I don't leave and I'm not disappointed when I get home. And that's what I have to say.
Man, the chat's cutting up on you, Chris. I feel bad because you had a lot of good ideas. I think.
Okay, look in the chat. Look in the chat, right? We're not.
Lou wants to know how many times you're going to drop Mike Baseball Collector's name tonight. Yeah,
Hey, I was getting ready to say, Lou, how many times when Lou's on something do I say, "Oh, look, we got the coolest dude in on YouTube"? Oh my gosh, hitting at me like that.
Greg said that Johnny Bench stopped doing signings because of the barn door incident. So
Yeah, well, I understand why.
I mean, we see it with Derek Jeter right now with his autographs being as expensive as they are. Why don't more of these players do the Derek Jeter route when they're good and really not sign much of anything? And then whenever they retire, they're able to, sell their autographs for thousands of dollars. Or is that only because Jeter is as good as he is and as popular as he is? What do you guys think about that, I guess?
Well, I know, in the 80s when I was younger and all the Golden Era guys were doing their rounds, Ted Williams, DiMaggio, Mantle, I mean, he signed a ton, but that's because nobody had their autographs, but I think that's one of the things I'm going to talk about with my vintage thing in a minute, and we're not trying to get ahead of myself, but, autographs are going to be a huge thing with these younger guys that are growing up pulling the autographs out of the packs. And so, yeah, I do think that's a great idea. But how do you limit them if they're pack pulled all the time?
Yeah, that's what Lou Rock brought up is the Fanatics pays them to sign right now, and Fanatics is making them sign so much stuff. Is a player, because they're in is a player required to join Fanatics? They don't have a choice. They can't join a separate company and say, like Ted Williams did, say I'm not letting you use my name and likeness. It's not even allowed. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's allowed. They, I believe, Marvin Harrison Jr. this year refused to join the NFL Players Association contract. I believe that's why I believe he didn't have some cards, some autographs, and some sets. So I think that you can refuse. And I think the problem is just there's a lot of pressure from the Players Association on the players to sign these deals because of how much money that contract is worth to the companies that paid them, right? So if you can't get your best young players to sign cards, that contract becomes less valuable to the next person who goes and signs that deal. So I feel like it's a lot of pressure probably from the Players Association itself for the players to sign.
So Chris, you actually stole my thunder. And I'll get to Tony here at the end. Mine was that the tables at the card show will be photos will be taken of them, and you could put on your VR headset, and you can go to the National with your VR headset, and you can literally pick what table you want to go to, and you can feel like you're looking at their table. And they'll upload the photos of the card, and you can actually hold the card, feel like you're holding the card up on the VR. And I think that's within 10 years where you could buy cards with a VR headset and look at them and feel like you're at the show. You guys think that's far-fetched?
You want to get some angry old guys that sit on the porch to scream at their shadows mad. 10 years from now, if you see me wearing some kind of funky hat with an antenna on it, just walking around in a circle, just cussing at stuff or running into walls, that's what you're going to get. So
I could barely figure out how to turn these stupid headphones on.
Yeah. So,
maybe vintage will take a while for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, let's go to Tony. Tony, did you have any ideas about the future of card shows that we didn't mention?
So, I've been back in the hobby a couple of years, so this is not going to be my strong suit. But this past year with Fanatics Fest, and they were turning this card shows into more of a Comic-Con kind of big event. And, what Chris was just pointing out is kind of what I'm going. I think it's going to go the opposite way. I think it's going to get more, vintage show. Now, in the small areas, they got to sell tables. They don't care whether you're Pokemon, vintage, modern. They just got to sell those tables out. But on the bigger shows, I think there'll come a time where, it's a little bit more central on different genres, I guess you could say, or eras. That would be awesome. I mean, we saw a big Cleveland this year trying to get in and out of that parking lot. I've never been to Chicago to the show there. I'm hoping it's a lot better, but I'm staying right across the road. But the getting in and out, if you made it into something bigger than it is now and added more things, I don't like Fanatics Fest. I don't know how in the world. So I'll say I don't think it's going that route. There were some people trying to push that, and I think we're already seeing the end of that road.
Yeah, I think there's a limit on how big they get. I just
Yeah.
think we see more of them because right now, we're seeing that Dallas is working out just fine, and Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. So you get places that follow their lead, like smaller areas like Kansas City, St. Louis. I think there's going to be a limit to the size, but they're going to push it.
But Strongsville's not big, right?
Have you been there?
No, I haven't. I'm going this year for the first time.
No, we're going to keep it a secret till you get there. So whatever size you think it is. No, it's not very big at all. It's not very big at all. But again, you got a pretty good idea what you're going to get there, right?
Right. That's kind of what you're describing.
Mm-hmm. And you're going to get some of these promoters that, hey, if it's not broke, don't fix it. We don't need to grow. We don't need more than this kind of dealers. So you're going to get some like that. But a lot of these guys that are putting these shows on, they're fairly. It's in my area. There's a guy that's putting a show on in Des Moines, Kansas City, Springfield, Missouri, Wichita, and he's fairly new at it. And he's grown really quick. I mean, he does a show a week before the national, and it's 500 to 700 tables in Des Moines, Iowa.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I was gonna say one of the things I think that's going to happen is also with Fanatics. They move their big show to June, so it's a month before the national, and to Chris's point, I think they're going to put a lot of pressure on the national. They're going to make those guys sign exclusive contracts, signers. So you won't see them at the national. You'll have to go to that June show in New York City. I think they're going to start signing dealers to exclusive deals. I think you're going to start seeing breakers and dealers start signing Fanatics exclusive deals to only set up at their shows or exclude going to some other shows. And I do think Fanatics wants to control the big shows, like the big name shows. They want either to be part of it or to control it, because if you look at how they've ran the hobby since they've started buying everything, is they don't really ask for permission. They just run it, and they don't really have a committee. It's not like a collector committee. It's not like a group of people help them. It's just them. And I feel like that is something that we'll see going further. It may not affect the national, but I could see them putting up a strong show to compete directly with national pretty soon.
See, and I'd like to hear Chris's opinion as a dealer, but I could not see a dealer tying himself down to Fanatics over the national, only if they haven't got their foot into the national yet. And that's the thing, Chris. There's a lot of old vintage dealers that have the best spot at the national, and there's a lot of guys outside that want to get in and they can't get in, and they're opening the upstairs this year in Chicago. But I think Jason brings up a good point though. If Fanatics treats those guys right that can't get their foot in the door, that modern's obviously super popular right now. That's a lot of modern dealers that would maybe be exclusive. That's interesting.
Well, money's going to talk. I don't care. That's a shame sometimes, but whoever's willing to pay most money, if they put that up for sale, spots up for sale and auction, I'm going to tell you some of those old dealers that's had those tables for the longest time that's made money every year doing it aren't going to overbid some of those new guys. Just not going to do it. It's just the way of life. Listen, I had season tickets to MU football for 33 years. And yeah, that's how I'm a sadist like that, because they haven't been good all those years. But we had the best tailgate parking spot, and I had that thing forever. But they ended up, when they restructured everything, season tickets and parking spot, I couldn't compete against, I couldn't keep my parking spot, even though they didn't take in the 32 years of, die hard being a fan, buying tickets, buying extra tickets, doing all the promotion. They didn't care about that. They just want to know about that initial check. Was I willing to pay X amount of money? And that is how the National is going to be if the wrong people get in charge of it. And that's going to be how every show is going to be. If it's going to come to money, I don't like it.
Yeah, I agree with the commenter that said they don't care about vintage. Well, I think if Fanatics wants to do is they want to control the modern part of the hobby.
You're right.
They want to lock down and make the National a vintage only show so that it takes 1/3 or half of the collectors away from it. Because if you go to the National and there's barely any breaking going on, if Topps doesn't show up, it's going to really hurt the National. I honestly think if they don't work together, you could see them pulling it apart, right? Where you only have vintage, you only have a few companies, and then everything else is at that June show, or then June and some other shows, because I could see them doing 4 or 5 shows a year, these big event shows, and these dealers all going to that and not going to the National. And I think that is what I kind of see is, because as I collect 90s cards, and I could see all the 90s card dealers going to Fanatics and being like, look, this is more in line with the people that go to my table versus these older vintage guys. And I think that could happen.
Believe it or not, I believe we need every part of the hobby to keep it strong. I don't want to see the National all vintage. Oh yeah, I'd love to. I'd go to it for damn sure. But that my collection doesn't need to stay strong. The hobby needs to stay strong, and so we need it from the littlest of the youngest of the kid to be interested to the dumbest of the guy spending the money, to vintage, to set builders. I'm afraid we're going to lose set builders, to tell you the truth. That's one of the things I think we're going to lose. Mm-hmm. We need everybody, and every leg of that table needs to stay strong. If not, we don't have a very strong table.
Yeah. Hey guys, let's move on. We've been on this topic for about 23 minutes, so let's move on to the next one. We got grading as the topic, predicting what the future of grading looks like, whether it's this year or 5 years from now or 20 years from now. Tony, why don't I let you start off with this one if you're good to go?
Yeah, well, grading is going to move into it already has, the AI deal. I mean, human hands, I have a feeling right now there's not many human hands touching cards at PSA. I wrote down these numbers. Last year, PSA graded 15.3 million cards. If they're working 255 work days in a year, that's 60,000 cards a day. 60,000. And I'm in a manufacturing business, so we have systems, right? It's similar. We build cabinets. So we're building residential cabinetry. I've got close to 70 employees, and there's systems. We have to do this, and then you do that, and then you do this. Well, my dad he's probably turned over in his grave, because the way we build cabinets now is so different than the way he built them. We have computerized machinery. We got a spray line that sprays all the cabinet parts, and the parts just feed through. A person doesn't really have to know how to spray. You're feeding a machine. That is what grading is going to be. So what I see is the future. First off, there's going to be somebody who has no experience at all that they're going to pay a little more minimum wage, who's going to put that card in that machine. And when it's done, it's going to turn green. They're going to take it out. And the way things are now, they may not even touch them much. So then if AI is involved, you could do a 3D picture of that card. And then on the slab, you could put a little QR code. And if I'm looking at it on my screen, I could take a picture of it and flip it around 180, 360 degrees and look at that card outside of that slab. I think that's something. That's kind of what you were describing with the show. So, so two things, the way they do things, and we're already seeing it. PSA can say all they want that their grades haven't changed. Oh, absolutely, they've changed. And so as long as AI is doing it, it's kind of like umpires, right? Everybody whines about the umpires. Hey, they're missing calls. Why don't we go to this automated strike zone? Well, nobody wants that. What kind of fun is that? We ain't got anything to be mad about. So yeah, it's Earl Weaver. What would he couldn't even come out and kick dirt on anybody because they're going to get the call right every time. So yeah, I think that's the future. It's going to be taken out of human hands. There's no way it's getting more and more graded cards every year. They can't do it.
I agree with you, Tony. I think people in the comments who are saying, "Oh, you can't do that with vintage and blah blah blah." Hey, I'm not the one that's going to do it, guys. I mean, the company's going to do it, and I honestly think PSA's been more strict lately because AI is doing a lot of the work.
Doing it. Yeah.
They've done in interviews where they use AI assistance. We think it's only for centering, but we don't. I honestly don't think we honestly know how far. The AI might tell PSA a suggested grade, and the grader might just sign off on it after looking it over real quick.
Exactly.
Right now. We really don't know. And Tony, I'm going to give my next is I agree with you, and I think PSA or a grading company is going to have an app where you take your phone and you get your phone at different angles. You're able to take a 3D type photo where it's not just a flat photo of the front and back. And PSA is going to charge you $5 to pre-grade your card. You're going to upload your card, and they're going to say, hey, that looks like a 3 to us. And then if you decide you could pay an extra $10, $15, send it in the mail to PSA to get slabbed, and they'll double check it. But I really think the future is from home, they're going to be able to give you an idea. Because as Mangini always says, everybody's looking for those 10s, right? So if somebody has a stack of modern cards, they can go through all 20 of them from home and say, oh, these 5 are supposed to get 10s. I'm going to send those 5 in. Chris, you look like you're ready to say something. You go ahead, Chris.
Oh, no, I mean, yeah, I think so too. But listen, that AI is only as smart as what the information we feed it. It just grades that thing without emotion. Yeah. And so I'm not looking, it's my funny joke, I'm not looking for a perfect 10. I'm looking for 2 5s with no morals. But never mind. But where I would like to see it go is they're going to figure out a way to not grade a card more than once. They're going to stop. I don't like this stuff, but they're going to figure out how to, once they grade that card and they give it a grade, they're going to figure out how that guy doesn't receive that card back, break it open, and send it in again. Even though they're making money for you to send that card in more than once, I think that's eventually going to – the cards are going to get so good. They're going to get so good that most of them is going to be 10s. The production is going to be so good. There's going to be – everything's going to be pretty damn good. I know Mangini hates this and a couple of my – and Dan or Dave and Dylan, whatever, hate to pay for that grade. There is a service there that's needed. It filled the service maybe before its time, but I get the fact that people don't they want to be able to touch, feel, and smell cards and that kind of stuff. But this grading card, people are going to use grading cards more of an exit strategy than anything else. So I hope it's relevant in the future. I hope they keep grading, but again, AI is going to take care of almost every bit of it. It just is.
Yeah. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah, I'm going to disagree on the AI side.
Okay.
For one thing is I use AI at work, and I work in quality control. We work in food, but there's a lot of similarities here. How to make a product the same way every time, right? Same way. I want to say this is that the biggest problem with AI and the biggest problem with any sort of computerized grading system is you first have to make sure the card is real. And what's going to happen with cards, especially the modern cards, is people in China, people in countries that have technology will figure out how the AI is working, and they'll be able to beat it. And if you're going to rely on just the computer to tell you if that card's authentic, they're going to beat the system every time. You're going to have fake downtowns and kabooms out the wazoo in holders. And that's the first thing that's going to happen. And it's already started to happen. Fake cards in the 90s are a big problem right now already. There's been tons and tons of fakes, PMGs. It's already happened. They're going to get better. And then if they know that there's a computer program that they just have to send in 50 cards to, and they start figuring out, okay, here's what caused this card to fail, and they'll get better and better and better. And then all of a sudden the floodgates will open. You'll have tons of fake cards getting into holders. You still need humans who can look at things in a different manner than AI can, because there's no AI person that can feel the card. A lot of cards that you can tell are fake is just by the cardboard stock itself. You can just feel the card and say, oh, this is not the right surface. This is not the right kind of material used for this card. So that's what I'm saying. I think it's going to be a combination. AI is great for things that are very non-judgmental, centering, the shape of the corners, is the card measure properly. Those are perfect tools. But if the card's real or not, if that patch is fake or not, there's a lot of things in there that human beings have to kind of make judgment calls based on things that are more sensory related. In comic books, there's smell, right? Like if you talk about comic books, there's like old comic book smell. If you got an old comic book and it doesn't smell like a comic book, then there's something wrong with it. It's something that's probably been it's been recolored, or they've tampered with it, right? There's these little things that you have to really watch out for. So I just think that is where I'm falling with AI, is that it's just not going to solve all the problems. And the other thing, I think Chris is perfectly right though, is the number one thing PSA is worried about is this idea that their grades are subjective to the point where people can basically go from a 6 to a 10, because that makes them look really bad. That's a horrible thing to have, in public, right? For people to say, I submitted this card 10 times and I got a grade between a 6 and 10. And it gives them a bad look. They also have a guarantee where they put money back every year. You can go to their P&L statement, and there's a line in there showing how much money they've dedicated to making mistakes. And I've said this in my videos, SGC doesn't, Beckett doesn't do this either. They don't hold money back. They don't have an actual, fund for making mistakes. PSA does, but PSA definitely wants to minimize making mistakes. I do think part of the reason we're seeing this grade, this issue, I call it the transparency issue we're having right now, where PSA has changed something. I think part of it is that the more tougher they are on cards, the less of a chance they'll have to pay out if they make a mistake. I think it's a way for them to hedge a little bit on having to make a horrible mistake and having to pay for it. So I do feel like there is something going on with the grading standards. They've changed, but I think there's also something going on with them hedging a little bit, because they have all the volume. They've kind of won the grading war. And so now they can be stricter grader, don't have to pay out as many, don't have to maybe be as risky, and are more conservative. And that's sort of how I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
I like that answer. I like that answer.
Yeah,
Especially that part about Chris is exactly right on something. They lost me after that.
I think you guys bring up some really good points there. I have to say it, the chat started going down a road of a patch card with my underwear, and yeah, I have to at least acknowledge the chat here. But let me just so we don't take too much time with it. Put your hand up if you think PSA at some point will put some type of invisible marking on a card that they don't tell you that's on there, so they can identify if they've graded it before. Does anybody think that that's possible? Will PSA put an invisible line where maybe they shine a certain light on it and they know they graded it before? Does anybody believe that?
I think they'll tell us about it, though. I think
they'll tell. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say they can't do it without telling you.
Okay.
They already do it for PSA DNA. I thought PSA DNA cards
they do.
had some sort of like marker on them.
Mm-hmm. I think they do too.
Okay. So do you guys, if they'll tell you about it, do you guys think that will happen in the future? Where they'll put a marking on the card?
Very, very well could be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know when, but later on.
They came out and said that when they started taking pictures of all the cards, that serial number cards, if they go back into their database using AI, to go through the database, and they've already graded it one time, from what I understand, if you have a number card, they can go back and it's already been graded once. They'll just slap the same grade on it. They will not even review it. They'll just give it the same grade it was graded the first time.
Yeah. Another thing got brought up in the chat a while ago from Mangini. He said if grading technology gets better or AI technology gets better and the new grades are the grades people quote unquote trust, and the old grades are, basically people don't trust the old grades or feel like the old grades are overgraded. Do you guys have fear that in 5 years from now, old grades will really be like, oh, take 2 grades off of that or take a grade off of that? I kind of feel like some of that's kind of already going
It's
on.
already going on. Yeah.
Old PSA numbers, don't you guys think? No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jason,
I don't think it's real because I went through I started grading basically right when it started happening. From my history and knowledge, there was times when they were grading tougher than they are now. So I think it's a mixed bag. I don't care if the collectors think it or the people buying cars today. I know there's holders out there that have cards that are severely undergraded and that would grade higher today if they were popped out. So to me, it's always.
Mangini said I effed up his question.
Yeah.
Okay, Mangini, I'll go back to your question if I can find it. Let me see here. I can't find it. Sorry, Mangini.
Well, I do think that there is going to be dealers that will use it as a way to drive the price down when they're buying older cards. They'll say, oh, this is an older holder. I'm not going to pay more than 80%, 60%, whatever. But it's like, but the card itself might actually be undergraded. And when they pop it out, they may actually get a higher grade. It's, because if you think about plus and minuses, they're going to be sometimes overgraded and undergraded. It's not going to fall on the spectrum of always being overgraded.
Eventually, there's going to be more high-end vintage cards graded than ungraded. Eventually, it might be years from now, whatever. But there's less there, and I know people do it, but there's less people buying vintage cards that are graded and cracking them open to fit them into their particular collection than there are of people, buying that card and getting them graded. So, that's going to be 2 to 1, 3 to 1, that kind of stuff. And just having them slab, the company's going to try to figure out a way to get people to slab more and more cards. That's their business model. They're going to, they want to slab cards. So they're going to come up with a newer flip or a microchip that, that says that can track your card wherever it is. You're going to be able to put that in a slab eventually. That when my 52 mantle gets stolen, they can track it to Theo's house somewhere in Pittsburgh. That's going to happen later on, and I'm talking in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think there's going to be a need for grading still, and and you guys know, most of you know that I got mine for an exit strategy. If something happens to me, my wife has an idea of what that card's worth according to the grade, and she's not going to have to sit down with somebody with 5,000 cards, checking 5,000 cards. Is this good? Is this good? That kind of stuff. So to me, there's a need for it.
Yeah, the main need is because so many people buy them online. So by knowing a grade, if it's a 1.5, I know there's a chance there's a crease through it. But if it's a 4, there shouldn't be a crease, or a 5. So that gives me a peace of mind without actually holding it in my hand. But what Theo was saying, maybe they come up with some sort of, like, and I was saying it too, where you can flip it around and look at it. So I don't know. I mean, I think the grading has gotten tougher, and I think the tougher it gets, the more people will choose to just crack them out and have them raw. But then that creates a problem on selling them online.
We always forget why grading came about in the first place. Grading came about in the first place because dealers couldn't stop themselves from misrepresenting what the cards were.
Yeah,
it shows. Exactly. And there was a bunch of collectors that got together and said, there's got to be something we can do. And that's where grading started, right? It was because dealers couldn't control themselves. And if we went back to raw cards again, it will happen again. And there's going to be and then there's going to be great dealers who always have great cards and you can trust. And there's going to be, and human beings will try to find deals, right? We'll be like, oh, this card looks like like a near mint card, and I'll pay the whatever. And then you come home and it's got a back crease, or it's got, or it's got an issue that you couldn't see at the show. And that was my experience before I started buying graded cards. Was about 50% of the cards I bought that were supposed to be near mint ended up having creases or something I couldn't see, with poor lighting at a show. It just, and it made the experience really terrible, honestly, before grading. So I get with grading being so difficult, but people just forget what it was like in the wild, wild west when there was no way to determine if a card was even authentic, and that was where I felt like we had a lot of problems.
Hey, I don't want to sound like a jerk, but I hope Ruben Snyder made a mistake with that word in there.
He meant to say goes.
He better have meant to say goes.
Yeah, he did. I think Dylan brought up there. You said you only grade your cards for your family, but Dylan brought up, or no, it wasn't Dylan. It was Lou Rock. He said you also grade for your show with Mike Moynihan. So
damn straight. Somebody asked me why that is so important. Like going after a card like that. I won't take up much of the time, but
all right.
Why would you go after a card that low? Because it's fun, right? My father-in-law and I had this game years ago to see who could buy the cheapest bourbon ever. In 2007, I bought a fifth of bourbon in Oaks, Pennsylvania for $5.67. Do you think I wanted to drink that fifth of bourbon? No. I wanted to bring that home with a receipt to show my father-in-law that I got the cheapest bourbon, cheaper than him. It's a game. It's just a game, and it's a game that brings a smile to my face. And that's why I do that. So,
yeah.
There was a question about my comic books. Every comic book on my wall behind me is an Alex Schomburg cover. There are a few way over here to my left that are LB Cole, but everything in the window here is Alex Schomburg.
Okay, cool. And now, after the show, I will put all their links in the info of this. I heard somebody saw, and I saw Andrew's helping with that, so thank you. All right, guys, we got 2 topics down, 2 to go. This one's going to be interesting. Pretty much 4 vintage guys, or I know Jason's probably the least out of all of us, but 4 totally vintage guys talking about modern and what we think the future of modern cards is. Who wants to start with their prediction on this one? And this includes modern product too. So who wants to lead off here?
Yeah, I can go. I mean, just from modern, I used to collect modern until about 2018. And then the pricing became just so much where I couldn't even, it wasn't even not affording it. It was, I literally couldn't put the value equation together to say this is something I should do. Even if it was just for entertainment, it just was the pricing has gotten so crazy. When I first started buying Bowman Draft back in 2010, 2011, 2012, you're talking $80 a box. I think the last year it came out $350 for a single box, and I think jumbos were $550. Like that is, to me, I just can't understand how a normal collector who, or a normal human being that makes a normal salary can afford to buy $500 to $600 boxes and get an autograph of a player who will never make the major leagues, and just understand that's what you're going to probably happen more often than not. So I just feel like with modern, it's turned into just gambling. It's just a modern way of gambling. And the thing that's funny is like I signed up for David Adams, their newsletter, and I get all their ads sent to me, and they're all about the thrill of pulling the card, the chase. You're going to be able to pull a great card and sell it for a lot of money. Like it's the language is gambling. And the thing that I see happening in modern is, honestly, I do think, because I'm a regulatory person. I went to college, went to law school. I think you're going to see regulation in the hobby, but it's going to be like this. It's going to be warning labels for marketing to kids. You're marketing gambling to kids and making them addicts because all it's going to take is one child who parents figured out that they spent $5,000 on a break and lost their money and got nothing out of the whole break. And they're going to know someone who's going to sue them, and they're going to start a class, and then that class will lead to a warning label, and then they'll restrict the labeling, they'll restrict the marketing of the products, and we're just playing with fire in the hobby. I'm just telling you, I work in the food industry. Hershey's got sued, Reese's got sued for not putting a smiley face on a piece of candy that had it on the label, right? They're in a class action suit for something that's silly. You think something like gambling to kids, enticing kids to gamble, because Fanatics has a sports book, right? DraftKings has breaks. So to me, it's that line is so thin between the modern hobby and gambling that it's not going to take much for someone to put two and two together and say, this needs to be regulated. It needs not to be marketed to kids. There should be warning labels on the packaging. You have to be a certain age to buy the product because it's not for kids anymore. And I think there's going to be some of that stuff happening in the future because all it takes is one person to be damaged by this. And if you think about it, there's probably people out there today that are addicted to gambling, that are buying cards, that are probably have a hobby issue. They're spending too much money. They're spending the house payment on cards. And that's already probably happening. I know people that I know in the hobby that's had a problem with that kind of addiction. Can you imagine that happening to a kid at 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old? That's going to be a real problem for the hobby if they continue down this path of marketing this product as a gambling type product.
What do you guys, Tony or Chris, what do you guys say?
So Jason stole my thunder on the gambling side. It is a complete gambling deal. They are marketing to kids as a gambling product without saying the word gambling. It is so obvious. It's a big nothing, basically. And when you're throwing commons in the trash can right there after you open up a box, that tells you there's a problem. I mean, it's so different. So he nailed the gambling side. So I'll leave that there. The side of it I was going to talk about was the future of the collecting side of it. There is so much product now, and there's all the different types of cards and the numbered cards and the colored cards, which, okay, awesome. But I don't understand, like, there's going to have to be a bubble break. And I know some people say this is Junk Wax Era Part 2, and then the people who collect modern shoot back. They're not creating as much. There's a buddy of mine that I've gotten to know on Instagram, and he goes by Trout Collector 5. And he posts on his Instagram page every day, posts a different trout card every single day. And I asked him, one time how many trout cards he has. He lives in the Anaheim area. So today on his story, and this played right into what I was going to say, he said it's a little bit discouraging when you have 2,501 trout cards entered into your trading card database, and you only have 9.4% of the trout cards. There is 26,656 cards in that database that is Mike Trout, and he's only played for 15 years. That's an average of 1,777 cards every single season of Mike Trout. So how do you determine down the road, other than the rookie card, which Mike Trout card is worth a crap, other than if you get lucky and pull a 1 of 1 or a 1 of 5 or a 1 of 25. So the collecting part of it is screwed before it ever. They're trying so hard to create false scarcity that they're screwing the pooch. So if kids get burned out, or young adults, or whoever they're marketing the modern cards to, those, if they get sick of not getting hits, they're going to do one of two things. They're either going to quit or they're going to go to vintage. I think more will end up quitting, personally.
Yeah, I agree, because people wonder why Pokemon compared to cards is more collectible to kids. Think about the number of sets they issue every year in Pokemon. It's not thousands, it's a couple. And there's only a couple of chase cards every set, right?
Yeah.
So They've made a very strong and have navigated that water very well to keep the cards from being overprinted and having something worth something at the end of the day. Sports cards are, to your point, they can just print whatever they want. If they want to print another set tomorrow, they'll print another set. Look at Wemby. Wemby becomes a big hit. They made 40, 50 sets of Wemby that didn't even ever exist before.
So we made a big deal about this card being overprinted. What they're doing today is making that look minuscule, in my opinion. But
yeah, to your point, and to kind of do, I'll get to you 1 second, Chris. Crossover with the grading. You see these products, these very expensive products where you get 5 cards. I think what National Treasures is one of them, where you get a briefcase. Well, I can foresee in the future a partnership with PSA or SGC where you open that 3 card or that 5 card briefcase and they're all already slabbed for you, and they're PSA 10s or PSA 9s or whatever. Your cards are already going to come graded, and they'll do a partnership similar to how Beckett did that partnership back in the day, where they did the generic grading on cards that you open out of packs. I really foresee that partnership. It's even possible that, Fanatics buys Beckett or another grading company, and they just do their own grading. It's not PSA. It's a grading company that Fanatics owns. Or maybe you open up a pack of 5 cards, and all 5 cards are graded already, and there's no fluff in there at all. Because, like Tony said, a lot of the base cards are just getting thrown away anyways. But go ahead, Chris.
Well, getting us 3 to be on your panel to talk about modern is about as useful as me going up to the Catholic Church and grabbing a nun and asking her about good sexual positions. Because we're looking at it through our eyes, and I get it, and I get the whole gambling thing. I do. I think some of this stuff is gambling, but it always has been. Really, in a smaller way. It's at least a way we can afford. I remember when packs went from 45 cents to $1.99, and I just knew I was going to get out of the hobby because I couldn't afford it. There was no way I was going to get this card, and this card. And things change. I don't know. I don't want to be the sheriff for the modern card collecting. I don't want to look at somebody and say, you are dumb doing what you're doing, because if it's bringing a smile to their face,
yeah, I agree.
They're making payments. They're making all their payment. Is this their hobby? I don't give a rat's ass what they do. Now, we talk about how people are, they're gambling and they're going broke buying these $400 boxes, or go buy a National Treasure box. You go buy one of those. You're spending more than that. But I'm telling you, they can do whatever they want to. I mean, we don't need to. I don't need to regulate them. I don't need to tell them they're stupid. Let them stay on their side of the hobby. If it gets to be too expensive for them, if it gets too expensive for them, then they'll have to make some critical decisions what they want to do with their fun money. But it's not up to me to say, hey, come over here and I wish I had the same amount of money as some of these kids take to a show, but they're getting that money from somewhere. And somebody, and I get it. I get it that, a 9-year-old's going to be in a break and he might not understand that break, or but guys, there's a thing on Facebook channel that I'm going to be part of. I want to be part of, but we're having a break. You're spending $355 or $400 to go into these one breaks, and there's a chance that you're going to get a 52 mantle. There's a legit chance. There's a chance you're going to get a bigger card, but you're also subsidizing that dealer's break to pay for those big cards. And somebody's going to be losing a ton of money. And somebody in that break's not going to be able to afford to lose $400. They're spending $400 in hopes that they get a $5,000 card, $20,000 card. And I'm here to tell you that most of them's going to leave disappointed. So what I want to see in the hobby and what I want to see in the future is I want to see them make cards available for the collector. If they're collecting for the player, who gives a rat's ass if Shohei Ohtani's worth a penny at the max? But if they get their card, that's satisfying a collector to me. If we're thinking that everybody's trying to make a buck. We're thinking everybody's trying to maximize their money, and if they're going to spend $1,000 on a card, that when they go and sell that card, it's going to be worth $1,000. I'm going to tell you, you're going to spend $55,000 on a truck, now $75,000 on a truck. When you go to sell that truck, it's not going to be worth $75,000. So if they're collecting it for fun, let them have fun. Yeah. Just let them have fun. And
here's a question for you, Chris, and I do get your point, and I appreciate you playing the other side of it. And it was one of my things for the future for Modern. Why is it so hard for them to add meaningful relics into the product? So at baseball games now, every single ball gets marked. Every single base gets marked. The concession or the stand over in the ballpark says this is Andrew McCutchen's second hit at this at bat. Why don't they get Shohei Ohtani's 50th home run jersey for that season? Cut it into pieces and make a card subset that's from that jersey. Why are we not doing that? It seems it's because they don't want to pay for the jersey. They only want to.
Here's the deal. They don't have to.
You don't have to.
They're getting by just fine with some kind of irrelevant Shohei Ohtani thing that he didn't even put on. If they weren't selling that product, if people weren't buying that product, then they would go, oh gosh, for us to sell this, we may have to do something better than what we're doing. But if you look at it right now, they're not losing. They're doing just fine. They're doing just fine until they have to get better. I would love them
to be so much cooler though if you knew what game and what at bat it was used on, which you do. Like that's what I'm not like. I would be interested in some of this stuff if I knew what at bat it was from or what game it was from.
If they can sell a non-relevant jersey for what they're selling it, what in the hell you think they're going to charge for a relevant jersey like that, right? So I mean, they just don't have to. You know,
I mean,
I would like
about the hobby.
They're doing a pretty good job keeping people's mind active toward going for a chase card of some sort. I wish for my old age, they would give me a scorecard. What's the best base cards that I'm supposed to go after this year? What's the rookie cards that I'm supposed to go after? Is this considered a rookie card? Is this not considered a rookie card? I wish I had that, but I don't want to change it. I don't want to become part of it. But if we're looking to get more people, into vintage stuff, why don't we get relevant? Why don't we show like repacks? Why don't we show videotapes of us repack in these boxes and putting some relevant cards of vintage stuff in there? So, here's the bad thing: if we're collecting vintage, it's going to be hard for us to open up any vintage. We're not going to be opening up much packs the rest of our lives. Yeah. It's not. We're not going to enjoy that fun, and they get to.
The sad thing is that we've lost so much technology in cards. So in any other type of industry, the technology gets better, right? You should have better printing technology, cooler looking cards with more technology in them. We've gone backwards as a hobby. There's technology that doesn't exist today that existed in the 90s. Jukebox is one. When's the last time we saw like the 97 embossed die cut refractors and how they did that whole set, the embossed? We've never seen that again. There's certain cards that were made in the 90s that they can't even make today. They don't even have the technology. When you talk to the manufacturers, they say, well, we could do that, but it's going to take too much money to invest in the technology to bring that back. So they're not investing in technology. They're not investing in things like being able to bring a game used product to the market that actually has bearing and meaning, such as what game it was used from. Like there's probably ways to do that. That's where, technology gets into the game here, and they refuse to invest in it. So this is the problem with modern, is that they don't have to Chris's point, because they're selling out. The fact is they can just put anything on a piece of cardboard, and for the last 5 years they've been selling out. It's going to take them not selling out every product, them to lose some money to try to get innovative and get better. But my point of view on the gambling, just so that you know where I'm coming from, is that the standard to determine if something is misleading or not, or is mislabeled or not, is is a normal consumer, right? A normal consumer, that's the standard. It's not an educated person who's in the hobby who knows everything about the cards. It's a reasonable consumer, a reasonable person who just walks in off the door and says, I'm going to get in this thing, I'm going to buy some product. Was this misleading to me? Like, did I think I was going to make a lot of money? Like, what do they really think? And that's the problem. That's the standard that they would have to face in a lawsuit. Does a reasonable person walking off the street understand the risk associated with buying into products today, and the price points and what's all going on with how the hobby works? I think it's pretty misleading if you're just coming off the street and don't know nothing. The first thing I always say to people getting into this hobby is, if you haven't been kind of screwed over once in this hobby, just wait. It's going to happen to you at some point. You're going to buy something that's fake. You're going to get something that's not right, because this is how the hobby works. It's why we have grading. So, so the fact that the hobby is misleading, and you have to know a ton of information to be able to safeguard yourself, even with all the stuff we have, the grading, the companies out there, shows you and just gives you a little bit of why the hobby isn't as safe as we think it is for people who are just coming in the hobby, especially kids.
Yeah, and I know people won't know about this analogy, but if your kids play Fortnite got in trouble a while ago because kids had their parents' credit card on there to buy different outfits and skins and stuff like that. Well, what happened was the kid just kept charging that card without the parents' knowledge, and there wasn't safety nets in there to get somebody to put a passcode on there. And so Fortnite had to pay like almost $1 billion back to some of the customers because of it. And same thing with Jason saying, these breaking websites, do they have like where an adult has to authenticate that a kid isn't on there? Or can you just go on there and just hit buy, and then all of a sudden, you know what I mean, the credit card bill comes in and you didn't realize your kid was on there, right? I mean, there needs to be more regulations.
Yeah, but I don't. That statement right there bothers me just a little bit now, because now we're asking the Fortnite company, hey, can you help us parent our kid? And I don't care for that.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying, with technology, it's very easy to spend money now compared to how it was before.
Oh, sure.
I just wish there was a product that Topps would put out that was more affordable for kids. Now, whether or not they buy them, I don't know. They probably done studies on that. Maybe that's why they don't make them. But like on the Little League World Series, when kids are watching and everything, they could market it to kids in that way, more of a collector angle. And they don't. They don't.
Have they ever, though? When's the last time you think they did that to market to kids? Because, the hobby's always gotten a little bit older, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I felt like that, when I was in college. You could buy it wasn't geared to kids, and now I don't even think it's geared to father and son. It's just, I don't know. It's a sad thing when you go in to buy, when you go in to buy, or you sit at the hobby shop, you sit at the card shop, and you notice, a kid comes in and he's got $5 to spend, and he doesn't have hardly any choice. But, if a dad comes in there, it's just, I guess it's my background. Give me two of those, whatever they are. It's just, you think we're pricing ourselves out, but somehow parents figure out how to get that stuff paid for. It just, wow. I agree with you. I wish it was a little bit more affordable, but anymore, that's new stuff's not the startup to the hobby. It's not dipping your toe in.
I think they could learn a lot from what's out there. I mean, Upper Deck does something on ePack where you can trade cards in that you get that you don't need anymore to get, more rare versions of cards, and you can keep doing what they call like these achievements. If they would do that in physical cards, that would help, because think about, like, you open up 5 boxes of base tops and you've got 400 commons. You can trade those in for one number card of a player you like. You at least have a card that you like, that that you don't have these 400, 500 cards that you don't want. They could do things like that. And there's something already out there, that these trade-it programs, these trading programs to get kids, because here's the thing is, kids want the cool cards that people show on Instagram, right? They want the kabooms, they want the downtowns, they want the cards that make people go, wow, you've got something cool. And if there was a way for some kid to get that by not just getting lucky out of a pack, okay, what if they trade their way up to it through the manufacturer to say, oh, if you trade in to get to this level, this level, and this level, eventually you get to a card that you really want. They could do that. They just don't want to, because they don't have to. It's too much work for them.
That's a lot of work. Yeah, it
happens on EPAC all the time. If you're on Upper Deck EPAC, you can trade up your cards and get something cool if you open product. And it's just like that idea already exists, but they won't do it because they don't have to.
We got to move on, guys. I think that's really cool, though, that to send 40 commons of a card and get one numbered card. That's really cool. I like that. But I do agree with you. It's too much probably work for them for what they're doing right now. I'll start with this one. So how do we think the vintage card market will look in the future? I got an idea that's a little bit modern and a little bit vintage. Okay, I guess, is everybody in here good with when Topps gets when they get a Clemente jersey and they cut it up and they make a relic card out of it? Is everybody fine with that here or not fine with it? Raise your hand if you're fine with it.
Depends on the jersey.
Yeah,
okay.
depends on the
jersey. Okay, so here's my question. Could you see this in the future? They get a 52 Mantle card, they cut it into 100 pieces, they make a card that looks like the Mantle card, and everybody gets 1 out of 100 pieces of that card, and now you have an ownership of 52 Mantle card, and it's a relic card. Could you guys see Topps ever doing that in the future or not?
Yeah, I can see them doing that.
Yeah, I could see that.
No,
I wouldn't want them to do it.
Yeah, I mean, they're cutting up Shoeless Joe Jackson bats and Babe Ruth jerseys. They surely can cut up a 52.
I guess why do like Darren's puking? Okay, so why would somebody be for a jersey being cut up but against a card being cut up? I'd love to know what's the difference in your opinion, Chris?
There's really no difference in my opinion. So I mean, why ruin why ruin one unique thing so you can make 100 different people feel a little bit better? Look at this little piece that I have. I don't know what's next. The Mona Lisa for the art collectors. Let's go cut up this Mona Lisa right here. No, no.
The 52 Mantle's not that scarce. So actually, the jersey's actually more scarce.
Yeah, I agree. I would rather them cut up a 52 Mantle than a Babe Ruth bat.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to do things if they can make money. I mean, we talked about it before, but as a collecting, I mean, if it was a 52 Mantle that was someone's back pocket and was all wadded up, I mean, sure. But if it was a PSA 10, no.
I'd rather them stub their toe and get that thought out of their head.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so let's let Tony go next. What did you have for prediction for vintage? What did you have?
So, vintage is vintage. It's what it is, right? It's already here. It's already there, out there. They're not making any more of them. So as far as the angle I wanted to go with younger collectors today, there's so many of the chase cards or the autograph cards, right? So at some point, when they move into vintage, I think the cards that are autographed will be a premium. So I think that's one angle I wanted to talk about, because it creates a level of scarcity. Now, there are some players in the vintage market like Williams and Mantle that just signed a ton of cards, but they're still worth a ton of money. And if you look at the pop reports, still a lot lower. So that's one. The other one, what was the other? I'm drawing a blank at the moment. But that was the main one, was the autograph market. I think is going to be really hot with younger people. One of the things too that's getting kids or young adults to know more about this is crazy, but my son-in-law, he's 30 years old, and we get to talking about cards and players. He's learning about players by playing video games, the baseball video game, and you can get to a certain level and they give you a card of Mickey Mantle or Sheila Show Jackson or whatever, and he's learning about players through that. So I found that really interesting. You know, that's not something that we had. So I think eventually people will move to vintage. It just always seems to happen where people move to older cards. But so that, I guess that's where I wanted to go with it.
Yeah. Chris, what was your prediction for vintage?
Well, it's something I don't want to see happen. I believe that football and basketball is going to eventually hit traction somewhere, and it's not going to. I don't believe it's going to catch baseball in my lifetime as far as but I think they're going to find football and basketball more collectible, more desirable, and there's going to be, as long as football and basketball keep staying as popular as it is, I believe that I believe we're going to see less and less of the high graded stuff out in the market because the people that are spending $100,000 and $200,000, they're probably more than just rich themselves. They're probably generational rich, a big portion of them. And so as soon as they pass, there might be less and less of those cards being sold right away, staying in the market. So I think the value of your cards that are mid-grade will start rising more, and you'll see more and more of those out on the market demanding more stuff. We're going to be, when we go by a few booths at the National or whatever card show, and we see 7s and 8s of Mickey Mantles and higher graded older stuff even, I think we're gonna see less and less of that, and because I think those are going to be brought in, and you're going to see more and more of the mid-grade stuff out there for sale. That's what I think.
I like your points there. Jason, what do you think?
I think that what the market's going to do is, I had a video where I talked about I'm, getting kind of out of my 50s, 60s, and 70s cards because they're just too common. There's so many of them out there still that the true rare cards, the rarity is going to make a big impact in terms of price. I think the next couple of years, you're going to see a flattening of those 50s, 60s, and 70s cards, even Mantles, even Clementes, because there's just such a big supply that you can go find those cards. You can buy them almost every day of the week on eBay, on any sort of auction house that has those cards. It's going to be the rare, and I think you're going to see. We talked about earlier before we came on Venezuelans. You're going to see even like O-Pee-Chee cards, like cards that are super rare, hard to get, low pop counts, because we've been integrating for 20 plus 30, almost 30 years now, that these pop counts mean something now. They've got a lot of history to them. So if certain cards haven't popped up by now, I'm not sure they're going to pop up, in high numbers. So I just feel like the future is really around rarity. The future is probably going to be more pre-war in terms of like cards, that are going to be bringing tons and tons of money. You're going to see weird cards that you've never seen before bring a lot of money because they're really rare. We're seeing it right now in 1914 Cracker Jacks. They've starting to just like explode in value because they're so much harder to get than 15s. They weren't a send-in. You couldn't just go and get a whole set sent you at once. There is a lot of cards like that that's going to just keep popping for. You're going to see M116s. You're going to see postcards. You're going to see things that are just hard to find, starting to really appreciate and value. And you're going to look at a card and you're going to be like, what is this card? What's going on with this card? Why is this so much money? And it's going to be because it's a 1 of 1 or it's 1 of 3 that exists in the world. You may not know what it is, but it's going to be worth a lot of money. I think that's going to be the future. I think you're going to see less and less people talking about the 50s and 60s, unless, to your point, super high grade, PSA 10s, PSA 9s. But the PSA 1 to 7 grade for a lot of those cards are pretty much common every day out there. And not saying that they're not worth anything, not saying they're not collectible. I'm just saying if you want to look at what people are going to be really looking for in the future, it's going to be those rare cards, and most of them are going to be pre-war.
Yeah, I think you make a good point, because to move the needle with a scarce rare card doesn't take that many collectors, really, to be honest with you. So if you double the amount of people that want it compared to the amount that are out there, you got a huge demand. When it comes to the more common cards with the high counts, you need a lot of people to move the needle. But I think Foul Ball brings up a point. He said pop count means nothing to me. I would say it means something to me, because if I'm looking for a certain card, it gives me an idea of how hard it's going to be to find, or if a card pops up I've never seen before, now I have an idea. I need to jump on that. There's only 20 of them that have been graded. Granted, I understand,
Right.
but it gives me an idea of the search and how hard it's going to be to come up again. Chris or Tony, you look like you're going to say something.
So the thing I was going to point out too is I think we're going to, and we're already seeing this, the end of set collecting is because it's kind of what we were talking about on the vintage thing about people throwing away the commons. People don't want to build sets anymore because they don't want to spend money on people they didn't see play, and they aren't worth any money, and yet they're sitting there and they're spending a lot of money on it. We're already seeing different tiers of Hall of Famers. You got Harmon Killebrew, the Whitey Fords of the world that really aren't worth a whole lot of money. You know what I'm saying? But there's just, I think the tiers in the space between them is going to get bigger.
But also, I mean, that's a great point about the set collecting. But eventually, when that happens and those commons get that people don't want them, set collecting's going to become a thing again.
Yeah, it'll go in cycles.
It truly will. I mean, baseball card collecting hopefully is going to be going on a long time. And I broke up my sets a few years back, and I'm kind of glad I did, just because of the space and stuff that I promised that I'd do around here. But man, it is so impressive when you see a guy. Here's my night, or Rocket Rick J has all those sets. Oh my gosh, that's so impressive. So I eventually that's going to be demand, just because of our actions as collectors. We're going to create that demand, even though we don't think we're creating a demand. We think we're creating room.
Yeah.
But I think vintage collecting, I think it's strong. And, I never thought of that in terms 20 years ago. Is my hobby strong? Who cares if it was strong? It was my hobby, but I think where we are is a pretty strong place, and I think the future's bright.
Well, go ahead, Jason. You could have the last comment. Wrap it up.
Yeah, I think player collecting is going to also become really strong. I think you're going to find people out there finding niche players, from their, either they have a personal connection to, from their community, from a team they follow. I do feel like player collecting is going to also really ramp up, because then you can get into those niche cards. That's when you see those niche cards really becoming big deals, is because you got player collectors really wanting to find these cards. And I feel like that creates a search that I put I said 90s cards and pre-war cards are very similar to me, because every year there seems to be new cards being found that no one's ever seen before. And I feel like that's fun. That makes the hobby more fun to see things like that popping up. And I feel like with player collecting, when those things happen and you're, I'm a cheap vendor collector, it's like, oh my God, there's a new cheap vendor card to go collect. That's so cool, right? That makes the hobby fun. And I think that's going to make, I think people, when they get involved in player collecting, I think it creates a lot more fun for the hobby.
Yeah. I can't agree more.
I'm a cheap vendor guy too. That's awesome.
All right. So I do want to say first and foremost, thank you to everybody that came to watch. We had over 100 people in here consistently for like a half an hour period. I think this is probably the biggest or second biggest live stream ever on the channel. So I want to thank the chat and the people that came to watch us for blab on for about an hour and 20 minutes. So thank you to the chat. And then I want to thank my panel for coming on today. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Theo.
Thank you.
Great time.
Yeah. And I saw a few people in here say, you know, they want to check out you guys' channels, I'll put the links down below. Yeah, check out these guys' channels. They have some great channels. They're definitely worth checking out. So, all right, well, I'll wrap it up. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you on the next one.